She was just my doctor. I was just another appointment. But something happened in that room that followed me home, and never let go. I stared at the confirmation email longer than necessary. Routine checkup. Tuesday. 10:30 a.m. I almost cancelled it, like I had cancelled the last two. There was always a reason: work, fatigue, the quiet fear of being told something was wrong. Or worse, being told everything was fine when I didn't feel that way inside. I had learned to function while feeling half present. To smile without arriving fully in my own life. Still, I went. The clinic was modern and painfully calm. White walls. Muted artwork meant to soothe people who didn't want to be there. I sat in the waiting room with my hands folded in my lap, listening to the soft hum of the building and the distant murmur of voices behind closed doors. I didn't know yet that this place, this ordinary Tuesday, would divide my life into before and after. When the nurse called my name, I followed her down a hallway that smelled faintly of antiseptic and lavender. She opened a door. And there she was. Dr. Eliza Moore stood as I entered, offering a smile that felt real. Not rushed. Not practiced. She had kind eyes, observant in a way that made me feel seen rather than examined. "Hi," she said. "I'm Eliza." The way she said it, like she expected me to remember. She didn't jump straight into questions. She asked how my week had been. Whether mornings were hard or easy for me. Whether I slept well. No one had ever asked me those things in a doctor's office. I found myself answering honestly. "I feel tired all the time," I admitted, staring at the floor. "Not physically. Just tired." Eliza nodded, pen paused above her clipboard. "That matters," she said. The words landed heavier than they should have. I told her about stress. About a breakup I never quite named as grief. About how I felt like my body was something I carried, not something I lived inside. She didn't interrupt. She didn't hurry me. For the first time in a long while, I felt like someone was listening without waiting for me to finish. The exam itself was gentle, methodical, respectful. Eliza explained every step before she did anything. "Let me know if you're uncomfortable," she said softly. Her hands were warm. Steady. Entirely professional. And yet, I was aware of everything. My breath. The space between us. The way she never rushed, never made me feel like an inconvenience. At one point, our eyes met. It lasted only a second. But something shifted. "Everything looks good," she said afterward, stepping back. "Physically." The word echoed. I smiled politely, nodded, pulled my jacket tighter around myself. Before I left, she hesitated at the door. "Stress can show up in ways tests don't catch," she said. "If you ever need support with that, it's worth taking seriously." I thanked her and left. But I didn't leave her behind. For days, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Not in a dramatic way. Not obsessively. Just, quietly. The memory of her voice surfaced while I washed dishes. Her expression returned when I tried to sleep. It unsettled me. Doctors were not supposed to linger like that. 2 weeks later, I booked another appointment. The second appointment felt different before it even began. I noticed it in the way my name sat on the screen at reception, in the way my body reacted as I took the same seat in the waiting room. Nothing about the clinic had changed, the walls were still pale, the clock still ticked too loudly, but I had. This time, I wasn't pretending the visit was purely practical. When the nurse called my name again, my stomach tightened. I followed her down the hallway with a sense of déjà vu so strong it felt rehearsed. Eliza was already in the room when I entered. She looked up, surprised, just briefly, before smoothing it away with professionalism. But I saw it. Recognition. Something close to relief. "Hi," she said again. "Hi," I replied. The word felt heavier this time, like it carried memory. She gestured for me to sit, and for a moment neither of us spoke. It wasn't awkward exactly. It was cautious. Like stepping into water you already know is deep. "I remember you," she said finally, her voice calm but quieter than before. I smiled before I could stop myself. "I hoped you would." Her lips curved slightly, then she looked down at my chart, grounding herself. She asked the usual questions. "Any changes? Any new symptoms?" I told her the truth. That I'd been more aware of my breathing lately. That I was sleeping a little better. That some days felt heavier now that I'd started paying attention. "That happens," she said. "When you stop ignoring yourself." Her gaze lifted again, lingering for just a second too long. During the exam, the familiarity settled in. I knew her movements now. The way she explained everything before she did it. The way she waited for my nod before continuing. At one point, she paused. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Yes," I said quickly, then hesitated. "Actually, yes. But also, no." She stilled, hands lowering slightly. "Do you want to talk about that?" I nodded. And just like that, the room felt smaller. "I don't know what I'm supposed to feel," I admitted. "About my life. About myself. It's like everything's fine, but nothing feels settled." Eliza listened, expression unreadable but intent. "Uncertainty doesn't mean something's wrong," she said carefully. "Sometimes it means something's waking up." The words landed between us like a confession neither of us was ready to own. When the appointment ended, she didn't rush me out. She printed my notes slowly, hands steady, jaw tight. "I want to be clear about something," she said, not looking at me. My pulse quickened. "There are boundaries here," she continued. "Important ones. And it's my responsibility to protect them." "I know," I said immediately. "I don't want to cross anything." She met my eyes then, and the look there was honest, and conflicted. "I'm glad," she said quietly. As I stood to leave, our hands brushed accidentally. Neither of us moved away right away. The contact was brief. Innocent. But it sent a current through me that had nothing to do with touch and everything to do with possibility. "Take care," she said, stepping back first. "You too," I replied. Outside, the air felt sharper. Colder. Like the world had shifted by a few degrees without asking permission. I walked home knowing one thing for certain. This wasn't just a checkup anymore. And neither of us was pretending it was. The email arrived 2 days later. It was brief. Professional. Carefully worded. "I've reviewed your notes and want to follow up regarding continuity of care. Please schedule your next appointment at reception." No warmth. No signature beyond her name and title. I stared at the screen longer than I needed to. It felt like a door closing quietly. At the clinic, Eliza was different. Not cold, never that, but composed in a way that felt deliberate. Her voice was measured, her smile smaller. She kept a careful distance, both physically and in the way she spoke. She began the appointment immediately. "I want to talk about boundaries," she said. The words sat heavy between us. "I value trust," she continued. "Especially in a setting like this. And I need to make sure I'm not doing anything that could compromise that, for you or for me." My chest tightened, but I nodded. "I understand. I don't want you to think you did anything wrong," she added quickly. "You didn't." The relief was sharp, almost painful. She referred me to another physician. "Just for future visits," she explained. "It's the right thing to do." I knew she was protecting both of us. I respected her for it. That didn't make it hurt less. When the appointment ended, she stood and extended her hand, formal now. I took it. The contact was brief. Neutral. But when she let go, her fingers lingered a fraction of a second longer than necessary. She noticed it too. Her breath hitched. "I wish things were simpler," she said before she could stop herself. The honesty startled us both. Then she straightened, "The doctor again." "Take care of yourself," she said. "You too," I replied. I left the clinic with a referral slip in my pocket and something heavier in my chest. Weeks passed. Life returned to its usual rhythm, but something essential felt missing. The new doctor was competent, kind even, but the room felt emptier. I spoke less. I listened more to the clock. Sometimes, when I passed the clinic on my way home, I wondered if Eliza was inside. If she thought about me the way I thought about her. I told myself it didn't matter. Until one afternoon, months later, I stepped into a small bookshop cafe across town. And heard her laugh. I froze with one foot still half inside the doorway. The bookshop cafe was small and narrow, shelves stacked high with novels that smelled like dust and paper and time. The kind of place you wandered into when you wanted to disappear for an hour. I hadn't planned to stay long, just a coffee, maybe a few pages of something comforting. Then I heard her. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just a laugh, low, unguarded, unmistakable. "Eliza." She sat at a small table near the back, sunlight spilling across her shoulder. Her hair was loose now, softer without the tie she wore at the clinic. She had on a sweater instead of a white coat, jeans instead of pressed trousers. She looked real. Like someone I might have met anywhere else, in a life that hadn't been so careful. She was laughing with a woman across from her, friend, colleague, I couldn't tell. The sight sent a brief, irrational pang through my chest. I should have turned around. I didn't. I ordered coffee with shaking hands and chose a table as far away as possible without leaving. I told myself I was being ridiculous. That coincidence didn't mean anything. That the world was full of people we once knew. But then she looked up. Her eyes met mine. The surprise on her face was instant and unfiltered. The conversation across from her stopped. Her smile faltered, then returned, slow and cautious, like she was stepping onto thin ice. "Hi," she said, standing. That word again. "Hi," I replied, my voice barely steady. "This is unexpected," she said lightly, though her eyes searched my face. "It is," I agreed. She gestured toward the empty chair at my table. "May I?" The woman she'd been with watched us curiously but said nothing as Eliza crossed the room. For a moment, we just stood there, unsure how to bridge the space between doctor and not that anymore. "You look well," Eliza said finally. "So do you." It was true. Without the weight of responsibility in her posture, she seemed younger somehow. We sat. Coffee cooled untouched between us. "I want you to know," she said quietly, "I hoped I'd run into you one day. Just, not like this." I smiled. "I hoped too." She exhaled, tension easing slightly from her shoulders. "There's no conflict now," she said, careful even here. "You're not my patient." "I know. But I still want to be honest," she added. "About how things felt. Back then." My heart thudded. "I felt it too," I said. Her gaze softened, something unspoken passing between us, relief, maybe. Or permission. We talked longer than we meant to. About books we loved. About how strange it was to be seen only in one context and then again in another. About the quiet weight of unchosen lives. When she finally glanced at her watch, she looked almost disappointed. "I should go," she said. "But, would you like to do this again? Properly. As two people who met in a bookshop." I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I said. She smiled then, really smiled. As she stood, her hand brushed my arm. This time, neither of us pretended it was an accident. "I'm glad you came in for that checkup," she said softly. "So am I." She walked away, leaving the scent of coffee and something like hope behind her. I sat there long after she left, smiling at nothing. Because for the first time, the future felt open. We chose a place neither of us had been before. A small wine bar tucked between a florist and a tailor, dimly lit and quiet enough to talk without leaning too close, though we did anyway. It felt important to start somewhere neutral, somewhere that didn't belong to either of our pasts. Eliza arrived first. I knew because I recognized her immediately through the window. She looked different again. Not the doctor. Not the woman from the bookshop. Something in between. Her posture was careful but not guarded, like she was aware of the weight of this moment and willing to carry it properly. When I stepped inside, she stood. "You came," she said, smiling. "So did you." We laughed softly, easing into our seats like people relearning gravity. Conversation flowed more easily than I expected. She asked about my work, what it actually felt like, not just what it paid. I asked about hers, how it felt to hold so much responsibility, to make decisions that followed people home in quiet ways. "I'm good at boundaries," she admitted, swirling her glass. "But I'm not immune to feeling." "I wouldn't have wanted you to be," I said. Her eyes lifted to mine, searching. Measuring. At one point, she leaned back and studied me. "Can I tell you something honestly?" she asked. "Please." "I was afraid," she said. "Not of you. Of how clear it felt." The words settled into me slowly. "I was afraid too," I admitted. But also, relieved. Like something finally made sense. When we stood to leave, the space between us felt charged but controlled. We stepped outside into the cool evening air, neither of us quite ready to say goodbye. Eliza hesitated, then spoke carefully. "I want to be very sure," she said, "that we're choosing this with open eyes. No confusion. No power imbalance. Just mutual interest." I met her gaze, steady. "That's what I want too." She nodded, decision settling in her expression. Then, she said softly, "May I kiss you?" The question mattered. "Yes," I answered. The kiss was gentle. Brief. Intentional. Less about hunger and more about arrival. Like a promise spoken quietly so it wouldn't break. When we pulled apart, her forehead rested lightly against mine. "This feels different," she murmured. "It is," I said. We didn't rush anything after that. We texted. We met for coffee, for walks, for long conversations that felt like laying down pieces of ourselves side by side. We learned each other in increments, safe, steady, real. And every time I looked at her, I felt it. This wasn't something that happened to us. It was something we were choosing. We moved slowly on purpose. Not because we lacked desire, but because we respected what it took to get here. Every step felt earned, like crossing a bridge one plank at a time and checking the weight before moving forward. We met in ordinary places. Parks in the early evening, when the lights softened and people passed us without looking twice. Small cafes where the tables were close enough that our knees almost touched, but never quite did. Bookstores where we wandered separate aisles and met again with pages folded down to mark passages we wanted to share. It was in those moments, unremarkable to anyone else, that trust grew. Eliza was different outside the clinic. She laughed more easily. She hesitated more, too. As if she was used to certainty and now had to relearn vulnerability. "I'm not very good at this part," she admitted once, as we walked beside the river. Letting someone see me without structure. I glanced at her. "You don't have to perform." She smiled at that, relieved. One evening, sitting on a park bench as the sky darkened, she told me about her marriage. "It ended years ago," she said. Kindly. Quietly. "But I think I stayed longer than I should have because it was easier to be known than to be honest." I didn't interrupt. "I didn't know how to want differently," she continued. "Until I did." Her hand rested between us on the bench, close enough to feel the warmth, not close enough to claim it. "Thank you for telling me," I said. She nodded, eyes shining but steady. When I finally told her about my last relationship, the way it faded without resolution, the way I learned to expect less than I needed, she listened the same way she always had. Without fixing. Without judgment. "That sounds lonely," she said softly. It was. Her fingers brushed mine then. Just once. Intentional. The first time she held my hand properly, it happened without ceremony. We were crossing the street, the light already changing. She reached for me instinctively, grip firm and sure. Neither of us let go when we reached the other side. The city moved around us. Cars passed. Someone laughed nearby. And in that simple contact, something settled. Later, when we stood outside my building, she hesitated. "I'm not ready to rush this," she said. "But I want you to know. I want you." I smiled, warmth spreading through me. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. She kissed my cheek then, soft, lingering, reverent. As she walked away, I realized something with a quiet certainty. This wasn't about restraint. It was about care. By now, our relationship had settled into a rhythm neither of us expected, yet both of us needed. It wasn't dramatic. There were no grand gestures or stolen confessions shouted over rooftops. It was quiet, like water finding its way through cracks in stone, steady, persistent, and inevitable. We cooked together sometimes. Mostly simple meals, pasta, roasted vegetables, scrambled eggs on Sunday mornings. She had a way of chopping onions that made me watch, fascinated. I'd make coffee while she moved around the kitchen, and we'd laugh at the little mistakes, a mismeasured pinch of salt, a sauce that boiled over, a burnt toast. "I swear I know how to cook," she would say, smirking as she fished out another blackened piece of bread. "I believe you," I said, smiling. "Eventually, I'll see proof." She would shake her head, laughing, and that laughter filled the apartment like sunlight. We went for walks. Through quiet streets, over bridges, around the park where the ducks seemed to know us. Sometimes we held hands, sometimes we walked side by side, talking about everything and nothing. She told me about her mother, her childhood, the way she once wanted to become a writer. I told her about my fears, my ambitions, the things I kept locked away from everyone else. No judgment. No pressure. Just presence. Evenings became a ritual. Books, soft music, a cup of tea each. Sometimes she'd rest her head against my shoulder while I read aloud. Sometimes I'd rest mine against hers while she traced patterns on my hand with her finger. Words weren't always necessary. Silence could speak volumes. And yet, the world outside remained constant. Work, responsibilities, errands, obligations. But they didn't intrude here. In this quiet life we were building, we belonged to ourselves first. That was enough. One night, after a long walk under the amber glow of street lamps, she stopped and turned to me. "I never thought it would feel like this," she said softly. "So, ordinary, and extraordinary at the same time." "I know," I replied, feeling it deep in my chest. "I've never felt at home anywhere, until now." Her hand found mine instinctively. She didn't speak, just squeezed it gently. We were learning the kind of love that doesn't announce itself with fireworks or declarations. It grows quietly. It builds in the mundane. It started with a mistake. A wrong number. A misdirected text that I sent absent-mindedly while half asleep one rainy evening. I didn't expect a reply. I didn't expect it to matter. But it did. The reply came almost instantly. Her name wasn't Eliza. She wasn't the doctor. She wasn't even someone I knew. And yet, there was something familiar in the tone. Witty. Playful. Warm. She made me laugh in a way that felt reckless and alive. We texted for hours that first night. Strange confessions, half-truths, jokes that only made sense to us. By the time I put my phone down, I realized my heart was racing in a way I hadn't felt since before Eliza. It was chaotic. Messy. Unplanned. And exactly what I needed. The next day, I met her by accident. She was in a cafe I visited often, sitting at the same table with a notebook open in front of her. Our eyes met. Recognition sparked. This was the person from last night. The one I had no right to feel drawn to. We laughed at the coincidence. Shared coffee. Shared stories. Shared a spark that neither of us wanted to name just yet. And then, almost simultaneously, I realized something. Eliza had texted earlier that morning. Just a short message. Thinking of you. It made my chest tighten. My hand shook slightly as I typed back. Me too. The line between past and present, chance and choice, blurred. I realized life had a way of circling back, of putting the right people in front of you at exactly the wrong, or right, time. By evening, I was caught between two worlds. The wrong number had awakened something spontaneous, urgent. Eliza had been steady, patient, grounding. Both felt necessary. Both felt real. I took a deep breath and decided to stop trying to control everything. I sent a message to the wrong number. Do you want to meet? A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a single word. Yes. Hours later, I stood on the street corner, waiting for her. And then I felt it, the certainty I had been chasing all this time. Not in control. Not planned. Not calculated. Just, right. The world felt softer, slower, and somehow more alive. Because sometimes, the right person comes into your life in the wrong way. And sometimes years passed quietly. Not without challenges. Life rarely works that way. There were days when work was exhausting, when the world felt heavy, when old fears and insecurities crept back in. But there was always us, steady, patient, present. We built a life not flashy, not performative, but ours. Our mornings began with coffee, the soft clatter of cups on saucers, and her head resting lightly on my shoulder. Sometimes we read aloud to each other, sometimes we just sat in silence, letting the quiet be enough. We still walked, hand in hand, along familiar streets and unknown ones alike. We explored new cafes, discovered hidden gardens, and laughed at small mistakes that reminded us we were human. And then came the family we had longed for in subtle, unspoken ways. We adopted a little girl with bright eyes and curiosity too large for the world. She became the center of everything, our shared joy, our shared responsibility, our shared legacy. Watching her grow, we learned again how to trust, how to care, how to let love shape life instead of fear. Some days, I thought about the checkup that started it all. How a simple, ordinary appointment led me to the most extraordinary connection I had ever known. How boundaries, patience, and timing had woven the threads of our story together. How a wrong number had reminded me that life has its own way of nudging you toward what matters. I often caught Eliza looking at me the same way I looked at her. With quiet awe, with steady affection, with gratitude for the small miracles of patience and time. Our love didn't shout. It didn't need to. It lived in the soft corners of everyday life, in shared laughter, in warm hands, in long walks, in whispered words before sleep. And in those moments, I understood what it meant to arrive. Not at a destination. Not at perfection. But at each other. At a love that remained, quietly, persistently, beautifully, like the life we had chosen together.